Hello everyone, welcome to our third Wellness Diwaniya. Today our MC is sitting next to me. She's no longer part of the audience. I'm very happy to talk to Dr. Fatemah Almosawi, behavioral scientist and soon to be behavioral scientist. Yes. About the importance of mental wellness, behavioral science in the workplace. So to start, I hope I don't forget myself and go into like jargon that I'm assuming you would understand. But let's start with talking about the importance of mental wellness in the workplace and the relationship of behavioral science with it.
Yeah, so thank you for this. Perhaps like maybe I want to explain what is behavioral science. It's not like psychology, it's like a different field. And what we focus on is mainly the decision-making process and how it affects behaviors. And there is the individual kind of choices and things that we base the decisions on. But a lot of it is also the environment around us. So most of the decisions are actually made by things in our environment and how we interact rather than just things we believe in. So out of around 10 decisions that we make around 35,000, like around, depends on what roles you have and what things you're responsible for. But because we are dealing with lots of data, lots of decisions, we tend to rely on stimuli or different things in the environment or interactions to prompt our decision-making process. So, and that's where there's the dual model of thinking fast and slow, and I'm sure you've read the book. Okay, but it's one of the models that are out there, but it just gives you that idea of the fast track of decision-making that is being done, and it comes with lots of faults, lots of biases, because the brain is trying to make those shortcuts. So we think about that aspect and not much of the syndromes that are associated with that. So anything that's to do with syndromes or disorders are usually towards a psychologist domain. But for behavioral scientists, we're thinking about that decision-making process. And of course, a workplace is an environment that affects us and we affect it. So we have to also think of how our own choices and the prompts that are around us make us behave in a certain way. Okay, so at work, there are the aspects of the coworkers, the different day actually that enrolls, and how that affects our choices when it comes to even performance or how, like the main topic now that is going around is the work-life balance that we are concerned about. And lots of like part of the role of the behavioral scientist is also to come up with policies or to ease that decision-making process so it benefits everyone else. And maybe one of the most popular toolkits or concept that has been circulating is the nudge theory. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. I'm sure you read the book and we discussed it several times. So it comes from the concept of what is called libertarian paternalism. So it's an idea of trying to kind of make it easy for people to make choices that are better for their health and like to get them to reach better choices, but at the same time not restricting their freedom of choice. Okay, so there are so many aspects that we look into, and while we're designing the environment, whether be it text in the space, the design of the actual physical design, or even the policies or how we deal with each other. So this is the side.
How does that impact productivity? So for both people, for the employee who is trying to do a better job and give more from or learn more from their work, and also from the employer's point of view, who I don't want to say measures success out of productivity, but that is one of the main factors.
So productivity is one aspect, but like maybe throughout, you're trying to watch for the stress levels, and because it kind of affects that aspect of the work. we have to understand how the brain works and how to make it easier for people to feel included, to feel they're part of the space, they're part of the organization. And a big part of it, I think, goes towards the culture and what you instill, what kind of awareness and how you care for the health. And then there are the individual aspects that people have to watch out for, but they're also reinforced by the culture and by the policies and the employers of the organization. Some of these include taking breaks. Like they're simple things. It's not major, complicated aspects that really affect people's performance. So taking breaks have been shown to actually increase productivity. Sometimes people, like employers, might think, I want to pack in more hours or get people at certain times to work and starting work. But like actually giving them breaks will allow them to perform better. And we've noticed after Corona, actually, most of the studies that came out, especially that people went back to the house and they were doing the hybrid model and staying online, that the whole work environment was like inducing lots of stressors and lots of problems when it comes to performance because of the long hours and how the work was structured, even in the space itself. Like, for example, if you want to make people more engaged and feeling better, you have to have greenery around. Like it's something, again, very small that can have a larger impact in how people are perceived. So productivity is one aspect of the different wellness bits, and it has to do with also promoting that awareness of burnout, awareness of how to handle work as a whole, and how to foster the culture that will promote things. So there have been several studies on different aspects of the work day and the work team and the dynamics of that. Also, encouraging people to seek therapists has also been something that is now growing. Lots of corporates, they're actually signing up with different firms just to normalize that kind of dialogue, because sometimes it's not just about someone performing, like doing their task or following through. There has been lots of other aspects that affect performance that we have to pinpoint and help people with.
So things like the environment, when you're talking about not just the team itself, but also the layout of offices, the colors, how
the
much
ceiling,
sunshine.
and the ceiling, you know, like and the ceiling with the job, huh? If you want people to work, like if their job involves data entry, you want a low ceiling. Okay, if you have a high ceiling for that job, you're not getting them to focus. You're not getting them to actually perform their job better. Whereas creatives, they need the high ceiling. If you put them in a low ceiling building, they're not going to be able to think up ideas and all of that. So for different targets, let's say, or different behaviors that you want to promote, then you have to also think about the architecture and the space, even the images that are around. There were some studies that found if you put dollar signs or anything related to money in the space, people will not be very collaborative. So imagine, like, just that kind of an image would affect how you deal with your colleagues. Okay. Something else they've noticed, like for those who had pictures of their children, they were more, they felt encouraged to work harder because there was a constant reminder. So this is what we mean by the space. Like, and I'm sure lots of you have this autopilot mode where you're kind of moving around and you don't even notice what you're doing. And it's part of the cues that your brain kind of picked up and created that kind of habit that to reduce the time you take to make a decision and think about things and all of that. So the same goes with the work, with anything that we do in terms of daily basis, that we tend to go to that autopilot mode. So if we want to reach the goals that we want to reach, and this is what we focus on, like especially with Alpassion, the setting of the goals and then achieving them, is that you have to create an environment that meets your goals. So if, for example, if I want to exercise or I want to promote not overeating, you know, I have to make sure my environment meets that more than what I think about the subject or what I believe to be the case, okay? One of the professors that we dealt with, he would say, I'm a behavioral scientist. I have a PhD in that. But whatever you put in front of me, I'll eat. Like regardless of the knowledge that I have. And this is the reality of things. Like we get so distracted from with the cues that we get and the overload of the decisions that we would just respond to the environment automatically, because conscious thought consumes a lot of energy. So especially at the end of the day, like whatever cake is there, it's going to end up in your stomach.
So if as a business owner, how would I be able to identify that there is a problem that can be fixed by just an adjustment in the environment itself?
So usually when people try to design a behavioral intervention, we will see kind of the pattern of what's happening and try to identify what can we nudge, or where can we intervene, or what can we place in their environment. Something that is easier for people to remember, maybe during COVID time, a nudge would have been the circles on the floor that told you how far you have to step apart. So without even thinking much, you can be placed in the right place. So again, corners that will signal different things, a message that reminds people of a certain aspect. It can be very simple, and the whole idea of nudging is to have something that is low cost, that can drive behavior. So fostering an environment that promotes wellness, I think, is very important, but also having different prompts that can guide people's thoughts and can promote different aspects of health is also important. So some organization would put take a break, or remember, like reminding people of those kind of aspects of life and taking care of oneself. Also promoting, allowing people to take breaks and leaves sometimes is also very important, to remind them not to engross themselves into work and forget about that side. So these are some of the aspects. There have been lots of studies in terms of physical health, and some even companies in the US or the UK, they would kind of give better packages for those who join gyms, for example. Okay, so this is something that also will get people to behave. So thinking about the incentive is also something, and tying it with people's wellness is very important.
So that's when it comes to the environment, but then on another level, you have sometimes a struggle getting your team to be cohesive with each other. There are a lot of common workplace biases,
yes,
which are not something physical that you can move.
Of course.
It's something more of a...
Yeah, we talked about it
Exactly.
several times, yeah. So for example, if we wanted, that takes us away slightly from mental health, but also it does tie in. So example, like if you want to have a concept of inclusion, or even like lots of the things are promoted through social norms, okay? So making a community or having the work culture to promote certain ideas will make it easier to be picked up. So again, you identify which behavior that you want. Like, so normalizing people talking about their feelings, normalizing people taking breaks, normalizing that people can go to therapy and it's okay to do that and to seek support are different aspects that could be part of the policy. It could be part of spoken sessions or things that will promote that kind of behavior. So there are different biases that we know exist, and again, the biases are the shortcuts in your brain, but usually they are at fault. They don't work to your advantage, they are to your disadvantage, but you try to de-bias or to counter act to those and produce something that will help you behave in the way that you want.
So I'm an organization that decided to have a behavioral intervention.
Okay.
And it's a long-term plan. I have it, and I'm going to be doing it for 5 years to reach my goals. How can I measure that it's actually working? Because it is very subtle things, and
Yes.
they're nudges.
Yes.
But you're trying to change, you're trying to shift the whole culture.
So there are different ways that we measure the impact of the intervention. Again, it depends. For example, when they did in the whole book about trying to get staff to consume more apples or more fruits, okay? What they did was they had a control group and the group that they were trying to affect, and they had whole apples in the canteen, and the other side was like they cut the apples and saw how many consumed from both groups. The cut apples obviously got more people to use them, so it's a simple behavioral thing that got people to eat apples, for example. Like, that's a very simple example. And you can measure the number of apples, for example, and how many people got those. So for every intervention, you have a different way of testing or measuring the impact. There are lots of also surveys in terms of wellness, satisfaction, like getting people's feedback themselves, okay? For a long-term strategy, in general, like, and you know this very well, in behavioral science, we think context matters, okay? This is a golden rule. So whenever we think about an intervention, the same intervention might not work in another place, okay? So one company, because there are so many aspects related to behavior, it's not just the one thing you're focused on, it's just because you're focused on it now, this is when you can see the effect of it. But there are so many complex interactions with the behaviors, and the only way to test for them is within that environment. So I would identify first the behavior that I want to change, okay? So is it people not taking breaks, people overworking? Like there were some interventions of sending SMS messages to remind people to get off their phones or laptops. Like some companies actually did that, okay? And then measured the response after that. So whatever the behavior that I want to tackle as an organization, I have to first collect whatever data that relates, and then try out different interventions. So it's not that one that is, in theory, works somewhere else would definitely work here. So like this is where you start building. I think 5 years is a long-term plan for things to plan like before the 5 years, because you'll find out there are a lot, like it will give you a clue to the next intervention. And usually also people get used to a certain environmental stimuli or a nudge that you have to turn things around sometimes to get people still making a behavior, because they can kind of decide on another path in terms of a behavior and it will not get you the results. So it will be case by case, and it will be...
Give me an example of something that worked.
In the workplace?
We would have heard of, like an intervention that actually made a difference.
So COVID was like a very huge thing that happened. Like there are lots of experiments in terms of nudges, like they use them in hotels. Like the marketeering world or the marketing world have been using nudges for ages. It's just that it became popular after the book and maybe adopted by the public policy and governments quite in the last 20 years or so. But for years, we've been under different experiments to see how we behave and how to intervene. But in terms of wellness, lots of work have been done on the breaks and the effect of breaks. Even in terms of communication or messaging, like this is the main thing that are in the field. Now there has been lots of tests on the 4-day week kind of, but it's still in trial and it doesn't work everywhere. But they thought this is something that can also contribute to wellness. It's the actually working days in the week, but it needs a proper structure, and that's another thing. Like even sometimes you try to nudge a behavior or do a certain way, but then your system or your policy doesn't support it, and it becomes a hurdle more than something that can help. So in some places, and I think the UK only recently, until now, lots of companies have a hybrid system, even in terms of events. Still not everyone went back, and there was a huge movement that people were refusing to go back to work. So they tried to attract, like we have, there's a shortage in the UK for people to work in certain governments because people decided to change careers completely because they noticed the value of wellness. So companies that adopt to that and can cater for this kind of care will be winning more, and it's a direction that I think every company should go towards.
So if we're heading towards that direction, then how can we apply behavioral science when it comes to a hybrid model?
So maybe one of the challenges that they faced was more about the productivity and performance. So, and this is something that they said it doesn't work everywhere because not every employee knows what they're doing somehow. So one of the nudges and the interventions that are important is to have written plans, clear deadlines, clear objectives of what has to be completed within a certain time frame. Also, although some people are very happy to be online, they found that human connection was also important for people's wellness. So it's not like it might work for some for a while, but someone won't notice that it's actually affecting them, that they're not around people. So the hybrid model, like lots of companies, they'll have a certain day where everyone will come in, or that they have certain people or certain teams come in to adjust for that. So I think now and towards the future, being flexible, being agile in terms of policies and what is needed is something very important, because also with different crises, different aspects, you want to be able to work with your team and to promote that kind of culture that cares for wellness.
How do the, let's say, upper management kind of board decisions affect employees' mental health when it becomes, in some cases we've seen not been inclusive, sometimes even biased more towards
certain genders, you're thinking?
Genders, yes.
Yeah, so inequality, yeah.
Same like bias kind of thing. But then it adds to frustration and, let's say, potential to see a future within a company?
So there's a part of inclusion and being part of the decision-making process, because we tend to stick to decisions that are made by us and that we are included and being part of, okay? So if you want to get the buy-in with people, it will benefit you in the long run, because this is what people, like the staff, will stick to. But I want to add something. Actually, upper management would really benefit from knowing a bit of nudging and behavioral science, and also being aware of their own decision-making process. They found that lots of boards, they take very quick time, like short time, to make major decisions, but they take almost forever to decide on lunch. Okay, so the weight of how they kind of decide is again, because food is closer to our heart than whatever other decision, and the brain doesn't kind of compute or put in the right effort for that. So it will be very important on a daily basis kind of to understand that, but also knowing that a certain policy, a certain design aspect would have a bigger impact on their staff. I think they can't look away from the importance of doing those behavioral interventions. There's also another aspect. So we don't only have nudging, we have also sludging. It's a different term where you try to kind of get people to avoid certain behaviors. Okay, so making the, let's say, bad decisions, but again, not judging much, but trying to kind of get people towards a better lifestyle. You try to make it hard for people to behave in the bad sense. For example, when you ask people to smoke outside or go to a certain floor, or you just make it a bit difficult, so you're effectively sludging people from that behavior. So there are so many different applications for the whole concept of behavioral science. And I think now more companies are incorporating this. I think even people are becoming more aware about that. Part of it is also the individual themselves. They have to believe in the importance of taking care of themselves. And if it's not something that they're willing to put the time in, then there is a certain resistance to the whole movement. And also, once people feel that you are trying to control their behavior, they're going to behave the other way. So it's a double-edged sword, and it has to be a collective kind of agreed decision that will help people. So I think listening to the employees is more important than just trying to come up with a policy or an intervention, because then you have more buy-in and compliance, that's it.
Yeah. I have an ethical question regarding that, but before that, if you've ever tried to cancel a subscription, close an account,
That's sludging.
That's sludge.
Yes.
Because it will take you forever and you can never get to do it. So they are hoping you forget about it and you continue paying a subscription. So that's
I heard
sludging.
something that some subscriptions, they ask you to fax in certain documents, so it's that difficult.
So one of the, and maybe it ties into mental well-being, but one of the ethical questions I've had in class was, if you're trying to nudge someone into a better kind of outcome, do you have to tell them?
Ooh, that's
so
because again, it's
an ethical question, because if you're looking at it, I always think about, with my kids, I don't have to explain to them why I'm nudging them. Not saying that the general should not have an opinion, but sometimes, as you said, if I know that you're trying to get me to do something, I must probably not do it, even if I know that it's actually good for me.
Yeah, so that's kind of the trick, but at the same time, there is the ethical side. If you know people are going to behave in a certain way, and it's for their better, is it ethical not to? Like if I know it will improve your lifestyle. So
yes, you have to.
Yeah, you have to.
But do I have to disclose it?
Yeah, so part of the whole formula is that, again, the resistance will come if you disclose that something is happening to you, or I'm trying out something like that. But if it seems targeted, then it's a different question. If it's a whole culture of let's do things that are better for us, then it's acceptable, and again, they're part of the process. And the whole idea of nudging is that they have a choice. It's not that they will behave in a certain way. It's like I'm making it easier to behave in a certain way. Okay, so whatever you're doing, it's like it's out there, but I'm trying. I'll make it easier for you to reach the better decision.
So trying to implement something behavioral like this into a company is time-consuming, could be expensive. So what is the long-term benefit for a company to invest in such an intervention?
So if you're talking, for let's say the negative side of not intervening, if someone reaches high stress levels and reaching burnout, you're not going to get anything out of that person, okay? So they're not going to be able to perform better, they're going to mess up their tasks, they're going to have a brain fog and all the different aspects, and prolonged stress can lead to other depression and anxiety. So taking someone to that track or allowing someone to go to that track is not going to really be benefit to any organization. You might end up spending more. And that's why lots of the companies, they're thinking in terms of overall wellness, including physical, because they will get better return in investing in their staff's health, okay? So again, the whole idea of nudging is that they're simple interventions. It's not something that's going to cost thousands or millions to get it rolling or get people to behave. And even sometimes, like people who used to calculate hours in terms of, am I getting in? No one gets in 8 hours of work in an 8-hour work day, okay? So usually your performance is between 2 to 4 max. Like it's not the whole hours, no matter what you do, okay? But unless you're in a factory, that's a different story. But lots of the desk office jobs, you have a certain number of hours. And they found, like lots of studies found that adding a break actually gets a better performance. So those interventions, again, depending on the intervention, but most of them would give you better results. And they're actually an investment in your workforce. And like some of the benefits is also getting loyalty. Like when people feel good about their workplace, they're most likely are gonna stay. Yeah. So you have better.
Can that also be applied to small businesses? Because it's a different kind of smaller environment.
It can. So you have certain aspects that will work. For example, flexible hours is something that is considered an intervention that can help people to behave better and have an overall better performance and a sense of wellness. Communication is very important. So one of the tools that is used for nudging is giving feedback. So when you give someone feedback, you let them know how they're doing, so they're most likely to stick to the right kind of performance or the right behavior. So these are all different aspects that any company at any scale would benefit from. The difference is that on a bigger scale, you're going to see bigger output, bigger, like the small intervention is going to look better in terms of numbers, but also as a percentage, the small team will matter. So if you're 5 and one of you, like it's a big number and big.
So how can I use behavioral science to promote and nudge employees to seek out mental health help once they need it?
So
there's a lot of stigma around it.
Yeah. And I think now it's getting better, to be honest. Still a lot needs to be done, but I do see the brightest side of things and how it's turning out now. But for example, like leading by example is considered one of the ways. So if higher management or the business owner, if we're talking about the small business setting, if they have that dialogue and say that, oh, I see a therapist, or I read this book about mental illness, like this is something that is shown to have an impact, and also normalizing. Okay, again, when we talked about social norms, so normalizing a certain behavior gets people to pick it up better. So having those dialogues, having access, like some companies would say, if you take time to go see a psychologist or psychiatrist, we will give it away from your holiday days. Like, so these different policies can feed into staff taking care of themselves and putting that. Reminding people to take breaks is something that lots of organizations can do, like in a simple way, but it has a huge impact, because sometimes people forget to have lunch or forget to take a break, and I think it's something to look into as well.
One of the most interesting directions I see behavioral science going is with the integration of AI right now.
Okay.
And the combination of using AI with the principles of behavioral science will somehow make access to mental health, or let's say better lifestyle practices, easier.
It can break certain stigma or certain barriers. So some people don't like to talk to someone else. If you're thinking in terms of chatbots or that kind of thing, then some people, they have a preference to having that kind of conversation, and they might have access to tools in a better way. I think we have to go back to basics, actually, more than that. Like the whole idea of overwhelming ourselves with decisions and having a decision overload is what is consuming us and affecting and causing burnout. Even
Maybe
like
I can get AI to do my decisions.
That's going to be dangerous, because you're not going to exercise your decision-making muscle, let's say. Okay, but I think more and more we're having that conversation of going back to basics and reminding people that they have to sleep. We're not robots, so we have to be eating well, we have to be moving. I'm into using AI for lots of things, but I also want people to remember that even being on your phone for a long time can really have a very bad effect on mental health, on your cycle of addiction. Like there are so many different aspects that can be influenced. So maybe AI can suggest certain things for us, certain policies to test. Okay, but and the chatbot would work for lots of people. But I think it's more about going back to basics and understanding how our body needs to recover, how our body needs time to decide. And I believe in certain interventions that are kind of actually the power of habits. Okay, so creating good habits will reduce the amount of decisions that you have to make, and in turn will allow you to be more present and more can make better decisions on the other decisions that matter. So not to kind of underestimate the power of habits as well is important.
So the field of behavioral science is very new. Maybe
new
but it hasn't been categorized as such for a very long time.
Okay.
So there's more and more research going into it, and it looks very promising. What do you foresee in the future when it comes to implementation of behavioral science? I know for a fact now there are some governments that have departments.
Not units,
dedicated to behavioral science.
And actually, it's the one degree that I took and I felt it helped me for life. So it's not just a career thing. I see it as something very vital that we understand our decision-making process, and then understand how to work with that. And just understanding that we do have biases. It also helps in conversations. Like one of the biases that I keep on thinking about it is the confirmation bias. So you look at data that will confirm what you believe. This is a cycle, okay, that can go into so many aspects of your life. Even if you're thinking of the workplace, you would have, like, whatever assumption you start with, you're going to confirm it with whatever evidence, not because it's true, just because there is this bias in our mind. So knowing these things, I think, shines light about so many aspects of our behavior that I think everyone has to practice every once in a while. Like, again, you have your habits for your everyday, your routine, but then dedicate some time to reflect and see what behaviors that really match your goals and how to work on that. Because also you can do reprogramming for some of the behaviors. For example, if we're trying to cut on the cake aspect, for example. Okay. Like one thing you can do is like to think about the scenarios or when you would be having cake, and then do this kind of exercise. It's called when, then, okay? So you say, for example, if you order cake after in a restaurant after you have your main course, then you'll say, and you identified that when the menu comes, I'm gonna select, then you'll say when the menu comes, I'm gonna put it down, for example. Like you kind of can override that kind of behavior. So it's very important to be, like I feel on a personal level, again, not even going to the workplace, behavioral science can help so many aspects, or just the knowledge of that, just knowing that we can have an influence on our behavior based on how we speak to ourselves and what aspects that we can control in the environment. Another example, like if you want to exercise or go to the gym, then there are certain things you have to place around the room to help you do that. This is on a personal level. On a policy level, there has been numerous studies that showed simple interventions leading to much bigger impact, and I don't see that going away. Now everything is being geared on a like data-driven policies. Like more and more, they're seeing that it's very important to understand and get the feedback of how people are behaving, and we have sometimes to monitor that behavior because it changes with different aspects. So I feel like there is a very good direction, and it behavioral science, or behavioral economics now they're calling it as well. It kind of broke that main paradigm, which was that people are rational beings. Okay, so this is the main thing that it broke, in the sense that we have to deal with people as irrational being, and not assume that every decision is going to be rational. So that understanding, I think, made it easier for lots of policymakers to understand how people behave, than force them to behave in a certain way. Okay, so that's I feel the switch in direction.
And on that point, before I open for questions, one of the I want to say hallmark studies that they keep telling us during the course is the research they did, again, about irrationality, where they looked at judges and they looked at their sentences before and after eating lunch. And the difference between the two, it's very funny, because you'd think, why would that affect? But if they are hungry, they give harsher, longer sentences other than when they have eaten. So even people who should have the experience, should have the background and everything, who are more rational, you'd think a judge would be more rational, is also affected by such.
Because we're humans, we're not robots. And I want to add to the judging experience, they said also, if judges are like someone who's trying to make a decision is holding a warm cup, they're going to have a different decision than if they were holding a cold cup. And I think that's scary, like, you know, so you're not aware.
Small basic things.
Okay, yes, and even like in sports, they notice that people usually judge in favor of a red team than a blue team. So when it's tied, the red team will win.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fatma. Please stick around. We still have networking. We would love to chat with you. Next week, we have our final Wellness Diwaniya session, which is looking at mental health and education. So I hope to see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.